Beijing has banned leading tech firms from buying chips from one of the world's largest manufacturers. AI chips produced by California-based tech giant Nvidia will no longer be tested by Chinese companies. The Chinese internet regulator has reportedly instructed businesses such as ByteDance, which owns TikTok and e-commerce giant Alibaba, to stop testing the Nvidia chip. CEO Jensen Huang, who is accompanying President Donald Trump on his state visit to the UK, says he is disappointed by the report.
Behind every AI breakthrough you hear about, a quiet war is happening in the background. On one side is Nvidia, the company whose chips power almost everything in advanced artificial intelligence. On the other side is China, the world's second largest economy, determined not to be dependent on American hardware. This is not a war of tanks and missiles. It is a battle over tiny pieces of silicon, and whoever wins could shape who leads AI, who controls data centers, and who sets the rules of the digital world for decades. So why do governments rewrite laws? Companies move entire data centers overseas, and investors panic over just one company's chips. Let's unpack why Nvidia versus China might be the most important war in tech. Think of AI chips as the new oil of the digital age. If you control the best chips, you control who can train the most powerful models, run the biggest cloud platforms, and build next-generation weapons, robots, and surveillance systems. Today, Nvidia's graphics processors, like the A100, H100, and their successors, are the default engines for advanced AI. Big companies such as Microsoft, Meta, OpenAI, and many others rely on them to train huge models. China, meanwhile, is chasing AI self-reliance. Its leaders do not want their future controlled by United States export rules or by a single American chip maker. So this is not just Nvidia versus China as two names in a headline. It is really about who writes the next chapter of the global tech order. Nvidia did not start as a geopolitical weapon. It began by making chips for gaming graphics. Then researchers realized those same chips were perfect for AI because they can crunch thousands of math operations in parallel. As generative AI exploded, demand for Nvidia chips went vertical. In its fiscal year 2024, Nvidia's revenue roughly doubled to around $61 billion, driven mostly by its data center business for AI. By 2024 and 2025, Nvidia had become one of the most valuable companies on Earth, and its chips turned into the gold rush shovels of AI. If you wanted to build a cutting-edge chatbot or image model, you bought Nvidia hardware or you fell behind. That dominance is exactly what pulled Nvidia into the middle of rising tension between Washington and Beijing. On October 7, 2022, the United States government rolled out sweeping export controls to limit China's access to advanced AI chips and semiconductor tools. The rules targeted high-end GPUs used for AI and supercomputing, advanced chip manufacturing equipment, and even certain technical support from United States persons to Chinese chip factories. The idea was simple but aggressive. Slow down China's most advanced AI and military applications by cutting off the hardware they need. Nvidia suddenly was not allowed to sell its top chips, like the A100 and H100, to many Chinese customers without special licenses. In response, Nvidia designed dialed-down chips such as the A800, H800, and H20, built specifically to stay just under the performance limits in the new rules. Then the rules tightened again in 2023, 2024, and 2025, closing loopholes and adding more Chinese entities to export blacklists. Every time Washington changed the rules, Nvidia had to redesign products and Chinese companies had to scramble for computing power. But that is only half the story. China did not just complain, it counterattacked. Chinese regulators began moving from strongly discouraging to outright banning major tech companies from buying Nvidia AI chips. Internet and cybersecurity regulators told domestic giants, such as Alibaba and ByteDance, to cancel orders and rely on local suppliers instead. At the same time, Beijing ordered that new state-funded data centers must use only domestic AI chips, and projects that are less than 30% complete have to rip out foreign chips or cancel plans to install them. Regulators even blocked ByteDance, one of Nvidia's biggest Chinese customers, from using Nvidia chips in some new data centers, forcing it to switch to Chinese hardware. On paper, it looked like China was cutting Nvidia off. But here is the twist. China still desperately needs top-tier compute. Faced with United States export bans and China's domestic chip push, Chinese tech giants got creative. Instead of giving up Nvidia GPUs, companies like Alibaba and ByteDance began training their large language models in overseas data centers, especially in Singapore and other Southeast Asian hubs, where they can legally access Nvidia's best chips. The United States has tried to tighten export controls again to close these loopholes, blocking even scaled-down Nvidia chips from being sold directly to China. At the same time, Chinese firms have been stockpiling older Nvidia chips and using them for domestic training, while increasingly deploying local chips for inference tasks, the part where trained models are actually run in daily use. China is also pushing its own champions. Huawei, for example, is ramping up shipments of its Ascend AI chips, including newer versions that package multiple chip dies together to approach Nvidia-class performance, aiming to become the default training chip inside China. The result is a messy global chess match where data centers move across borders, models travel digitally, and rules change faster than the hardware itself. Here is the part that makes this war uniquely complicated. Nobody really controls the whole stack. Even if China designs its own AI chips, it still relies on advanced lithography machines from companies like ASML in the Netherlands to manufacture the most cutting-edge designs, and ASML is under pressure from the United States and allies not to ship its top tools to China. Even if the United States dominates chip design and export controls, American firms depend on global foundries such as TSMC and Samsung, and on huge overseas markets, including China, for revenue. And Nvidia itself is caught in the middle. China used to be one of its biggest markets for data center chips. Yet Nvidia's recent record revenues show it can still grow explosively by selling to United States and allied cloud providers, even as Chinese demand is squeezed. So both sides are trying to decouple just enough to protect their national interests, without blowing up the entire global semiconductor ecosystem they still depend on. In pure AI hardware performance, Nvidia still leads. Its top GPUs, combined with its CUDA software ecosystem, remain the gold standard for training frontier models. In control over choke points, the United States and its allies hold key cards, export rules, advanced manufacturing tools, and much of the high-end cloud market. China's strengths look different. It has massive domestic data demand, a fast-growing ecosystem of local chip makers like Huawei and others, and a government willing to enforce buy local rules in data centers and critical infrastructure. In the short term, that means China may have to accept slower or less efficient AI training in many cases, or rely on offshore workarounds. In the long term, it could force domestic innovation that makes China less vulnerable to foreign pressure. The scary question for both sides is this: can they hit each other hard enough to gain leverage without triggering a full fracture in the global chip supply chain? Over the next few years, a few key signals will show where this war is heading. First, export control updates. Each new round of United States rules on AI chips and chip tools, or any multilateral agreements with allies, changes the speed limit on how fast China can scale AI. Second, China's domestic chip progress. If Huawei and other Chinese firms get close enough to Nvidia's performance, especially in training large models, the balance of power starts to shift. Third, data center rules. Expanding bans on foreign AI chips in state-funded projects or broader Buy Chinese mandates would further shrink Nvidia's footprint inside China. Fourth, offshore training tricks. If Chinese firms keep expanding AI training in Southeast Asia and other regions using Nvidia GPUs, expect new debates in Washington about how to close those paths. Fifth, global AI regulation. As countries introduce rules for powerful models and cloud compute, control over chips will become even more tightly linked to control over AI safety, security, and surveillance. Each of these flashpoints can tilt the war slightly in Nvidia's favor or in China's favor, and every move sends shockwaves through markets and the rest of the world's AI plans. So why is the Nvidia versus China struggle arguably the most important war in tech? Because it sits at the intersection of almost everything the digital future depends on. Who gets to build the most powerful AI? Who controls the data centers they run on? Which countries set the rules for surveillance and security? And which companies become the railroads of the AI era? When you hear about new export controls, China banning certain foreign chips, or Nvidia announcing record earnings, you are not just hearing business news. You are watching a slow-motion power struggle over the core infrastructure of the 21st century internet. We do not know exactly how it ends, but one thing is clear. The outcome of this chip war will shape what AI you can use, which countries lead in technology, and how much control any single government or company has over the tools that now run our digital lives.